ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to Jerusalem's Gate. I'm always glad to give the news. I tell you, I get so excited sometimes that when you see Scripture and you study the news and how it just folds directly into a puzzle and just absolutely amazing. And what we're going to go over today is the INF Treaty. United States and Russia dropping out of the INF Treaty. It's possibly sparking, or will most likely spark another arms race. And the INF Treaty held strong from the 80s, the mid 80s. I think it was 87, if I'm not mistaken, when it was signed. But I got some information. I got an article to go over with you. I got some scriptures to go over with you, and I got a video from CGTN about some high-tech missiles that Russia is developing. But first on to business. Let's get on to business. All right. Out of Al Jazeera, title reads, huge mistake, fears of arms race as U.S.-Russia suspend INF pact. Analysts say demise of arms control treaty offers U.S. little strategic benefit, pushes world, quote, closer to a nuclear war. Kind of reminds you when we were younger. For us that grew up during the Cold War era, I'm a little young for that, but my younger age, it was the height of the Cold War. Let's read some of this article. It's again coming from Al Jazeera. Let's dive into it. Okay, in an escalating standoff over nuclear weapons, Russia and the United States have suspended compliance with the Cold War era Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, prompting fears a new arms race that analysts and politicians say could push the world, quote, much closer to nuclear war. The long-running dispute between Washington and Moscow came to a head on Friday when U.S. President Donald Trump accused Russia of violating the 1987 bilateral treaty with, quote, impunity, and announced his government was suspending its obligations under the landmark pact. Let's go over one more paragraph. Pledging to move forward with its own military response options. Okay, that's what I think happened here is that the way the technology has really been exploding in the short, long-range missiles, that there was no way they can keep up with current technology without violating the INF Treaty. I'm sure they tried to in secret, but once it became known, both sides, I think both sides wanted out of it to keep up with modern-day weaponry in regards to the high-tech missile and long and short-range missile technology. But what I really wanted to dive into is what does the Scripture say about this? We see a possible another Cold War coming. So what does the Scripture say about this? You know, when you hear Cold War, you think of nuclear weapons, nuclear warfare. Well, I'm going to show you something. Some of y'all may already know this. It's in 2 Peter chapter 3. Now, what I want to focus in on is verse 10. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, the earth also and the works that therein shall be burned up. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This is the way I'm reading, and this is the way I read it, understood it most of my life through Bible school and everything. But the day of the Lord, notice they don't call it the day of the devil or the day of man. They call it the day of the Lord. Will come as a thief in the night. Now hear this. In the which the heavens, now when they talk about heavens here, they're talking about the first heaven, where the clouds are. Heaven shall pass away with a great noise. In other words, the heavens shall part with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Now, what can melt everything on the earth with fervent heat? The earth also and the works that therein shall be burned up. Now, Peter, the Apostle Peter, had no idea about nuclear weapons. I'm thinking he's describing a nuclear explosion. What else can part the clouds with a loud noise, that can melt the elements on Earth with fervent heat and burn up everything. I think he was describing, not knowing when he penned it, of course, I think he's describing a nuclear explosion. And I went over this before, and I wanted to revisit it. Now, catch this. He says it in verse 10. Now, whenever you want to verify something, it's usually repeated. Now, go to verse 12, just a couple of verses below. Looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens, they're talking about where the clouds are, being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you, you don't have to be a biblical theologian to figure it out. You really don't. You don't have to go to Bible school or seminary to figure it out. What do y'all think? You know, I'd love to hear your opinions on it in the comment section. What do you think he was penning there? But I thought I wanted to bring that up to you. You know, the INF treaty is pretty much over. The advancement in weapons, you're going to start seeing both sides increase the high-tech weapons and delivery systems. Now they're looking at low-yield nuclear weapons with less of a bang and less radiation. And countries, United States, are starting to look at the low-yield tactical nuclear weapons and naming it something else other than a nuclear weapon. By changing, I'm not a nuclear scientist, but it changes the structure in which the bomb is made somehow. But I wanted to show you this today. I thought it was interesting when I came across that article. The article's a few days old, but I wanted to show it to you today. And the first thing that popped in my mind was 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10 and 12. Really something to think about. But I got a video that shows some weaponry that Russia's coming out with. It's following this. And hey, on a personal note, thanks for tuning in to Jerusalem's Gate. Hey, we make no money here at Jerusalem's Gate. We do it strictly for the love of getting the word out, the gospel out, and in regards to current day news. So give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you have a different opinion or you agree, we'd love to hear from you in the comments section. Thanks for tuning in once again. Here comes the video.
Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says work will begin to develop new types of land-based missile systems, and these are currently banned under the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, a Cold War-era agreement that will no longer be in force in 6 months' time. The U.S. triggered its withdrawal from the agreement last week after years of having accused Russia of violating the agreement. Russia denies ever breaking the INF Treaty, but in response it has also given notice of its withdrawal. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu says that work will now begin to create long-range hypersonic and cruise missiles, and they could be ready as early as 2021.
In the course of 2019 and 2020, we need to develop a land-based version of the Navy's Kalibr, with a long-range cruise missile, which has proven itself in Syria. During the same time period, we have to create a new land-based hypersonic long-range missile.
He also suggested that the existing air and sea-based missiles could be adapted to launch on land. The INF Treaty was signed in 1987 between the US and the Soviet Union, and there are concerns that its collapse could bring about the start of a new arms race. With the shackles off, Russia will be free to position missiles within range of a number of European targets, although Russian President Vladimir Putin has said he won't do so unless the US does so first. Julia Chapman, CGTN, Moscow.